Yeah, no, that's an interesting take, and I think what I've found in my career, I've worked with people who've come from like doing a formal CS degree, computer science degree, and even with that, it doesn't make you a good programmer. It helps you to think about how the machine is working and how the systems can be set up to be performant, and that you're learning algorithms and a lot of theory about how all of this stuff works. But that doesn't naturally translate into being a good programmer, and I think that's kind of the thing that I still don't feel that I am a good programmer. I think that's fundamentally what it is. I think, if you look at it just purely on the basis of like, can you write an elegant solution to a given problem? My answer is no, from the angle of a systems thing. But when it comes to, does it solve the business problem? The answer is yes. And then from that perspective, I think I am a good programmer, because I think I can see things from like the business owner or the stakeholder's perspective, and help translate things back from a more technical angle to the terminology that they will understand if they're less technical. And then it becomes less about like how good you are at a sort of some objective scale of measuring things to the standard of grades and certifications and things, and it's more about not even how quickly you can get things done, but how you can achieve an end result that meets all of the requirements within a given time frame, and budget. At the end of the day, is like customers have got a certain amount of money that they can afford to pay for things, and if you can do it within their budget, then that's kind of the job's done. And they care very little really about what programming language you use or what framework you use or how you deliver the thing to the like what algorithms you've used to do it. They just want the thing to work, and for it to work kind of reliably. So yeah, it's kind of, I feel like I learned a lot of those lessons very early on, which was good.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I got the point, because it's at the end of the day,
because I got frustrated with the fact that these businesses basically just, they want you to come in with a quick fix, and it's not elegant and it doesn't feel right, because that the long-term solution is there's something better. There's some better way of doing this. When I write code now, I know that it's code that must be written and it's of real value. It's not just like, chucking some component into some page because somebody says that that's going to be a good thing for the business.
but what is the business model that keep this project alive? So welcome guys to Let's Code Podcast, a podcast where we interview software engineers who share entrepreneurial story. And here we are on episode number 10 of the podcast, and we have Simon, the owner and the maintainer of NativePHP, also the technical co-founder of STLS, and the owner of Laravel Dev, which is one of the biggest Laravel developer directory. And we will go more about Simon's story after this intro. So Simon, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. It will be a pleasure hosting you for today's episode. So can you give the audience more insight about yourself?
Thanks for having me, Elias. It's great to be here. Well, insights about me. I'm a very boring nerd. I like to play with computers. I have done for a very long time. And I can remember being a small child and being fascinated by, this, you can type keys on a keyboard and stuff happens on the screen, it's like magical. Yeah, I always, from kind of whenever I remember, wanted to get into programming. And so I started looking at that, probably not properly enough until I'd finished my schooling at like 16, and then the first language that I picked up basically was PHP. So I've been working in PHP for about 25 years now.
Wow,
That's
amazing.
Yeah, and I do have other hobbies. but they pale into insignificance compared to my programming. So
Interesting. And like you mentioned, this is like a 25 years of using PHP. Like, how
yeah.
was the experience, like from the first version of PHP to the version that we have right now? Like, what is your experience? Like, are you going through all of this version from for PHP?
Yeah, I didn't use the first version of PHP. It was a little bit older than, like I was too young at the time to even be fully aware. I don't think we even had like the internet at home when the first version of PHP was released. But yeah, I think I started really on like PHP 4 something. I can't remember the exact version number, but there was like it didn't have a lot of the conveniences that the language has today. How familiar are you with PHP? Have you used it? Do you use
Yeah,
it?
I like I use the PHP quite sometime, like about like 2 years or something like this.
Cool. So you're sort of familiar with modern PHP.
Yes.
Um, even like version 4 didn't have things like object oriented programming. There were some little things that would allow you to do certain pieces of kind of object style programming, but it wasn't fleshed out properly. And yeah, I mean, distinctly remember upgrading to PHP 5.3, I think it was, when there was all these like advancements that were made in namespaces and anonymous functions and all of the things that we kind of take for granted today, that have allowed the language to like excel, and it just didn't have a lot of that stuff. And then yeah, there's like these big moments in time where things like Composer came out, some of the frameworks. I was using CodeIgniter. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
Yes.
CodeIgniter was kind of huge for a while. And then Laravel came along, and like every good PHP programmer, I built my own framework as well. So yeah, been through the journey of all of that kind of stuff, and like it's just got better and better. I remember going through this period where everybody seemed to be building things with Ruby on Rails, and I was like learning Ruby on Rails because it was the cool thing. And I was just so stuck with how some of it worked, and I like couldn't get my head around it. And I kept going back to PHP, and I was just like, "What's wrong with PHP? Why can't PHP do all of this stuff?" And of course, it can. It's quite capable. And yeah, just like stayed with it, and PHP eventually did get good enough to do all of those things and more. So yeah, kind of glad that I stuck with that language, honestly.
That's great. That's great. Awesome. Thank you for like I mentioned that. And also like I mentioned I have been using like a PHP for like 2 years. And also the first programming that I learned, programming language, it was PHP. I hate it at first,
Nice.
but at like a later time within using like a Laravel, I love it
Hmm.
more because of the Laravel, because it's much easier than vanilla PHP or like a without using a framework. It's like a more
Yeah.
structure, so it's like a better for me. And going through like your timeline, I would say like currently you like have been using PHP for quite some time. Like did you go through like the formal way, or like the academic way of getting like a degree on computer science, or the self-taught way to be able to get your hand dirty in programming?
Yeah, I think I would call myself self-taught. Although in reality it was other people. Just I did it on my own time, like reading books, watching videos if there were such things available. I mean, when I started to learn how to do PHP, YouTube didn't exist. There was no Laracasts and all of that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So it was a lot of reading a book, writing the code out that's written in the book, like printed pages as well. There wasn't things like Kindle or iPhone. It's literally there's some code that somebody's written that they've printed in a book. I'm typing it out into Notepad, I think it was at the time, like on a Windows machine, writing in Notepad, saving it as a .php file, and then trying to figure out how to run it under Apache, and they'd kind of like the book that I'd got went through all of the like basic setup of an Apache installation on Windows with PHP with MySQL. So this is kind of the well, they call it the lamp stack, right? It was
Yes.
eventually, because what you ran on was a Linux server, so it was Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, and that was the way to kind of get up and running with PHP, but like building web applications. And so I just had to follow those guides and try stuff, and then you start to explore like, well, if they're doing it that way, maybe I can do it this way. And then you start learning how to like read the documentation. So I'm reading through the PHP website almost like one page at a time, like, oh, and what's next? And trying to learn all of the things that are there and try to just understand as many of the principles of the thing, as I'm trying to solve problems, I'm trying to create solutions, I'm trying to make the things that are in my head, but at the same time, I'm sort of figuring all of this stuff out. And the book that I had was really good, and it was PHP, although I started using PHP and PHP 4, the book was PHP 5, and so it kind of covered a lot of the object-oriented stuff, and it was... yeah, I mean, I could just go at my own pace and all of that kind of thing. I would say it probably took me a lot longer to learn how to become a programmer. I don't really feel like I became a strong engineer until probably the second half, maybe even more than that, of my career, because I saw like what other people were able to accomplish and just felt like they were going a lot faster than me, and that they were just able to come up with these like really elegant solutions to problems, and I was just sort of bashing the keyboard to make things happen, But
Makes sense.
all the way through it, I feel like I was learning stuff, and that's kind of, I think, probably even more important than how quickly I was able to do it. I learned like patience, of how to solve problems and kind of how to Google things as well. Because the only thing that you could do at the time to kind of solve things, I mean, there was no Stack Overflow and things at that time. There was no AI, obviously. You just had to like Google search, try and type the best search phrase that's going to bring the result that you wanted to the top. And lots and lots and lots of reading, which it just took a lot of time. But yeah, I'd say now people are really lucky. Like, you can learn with the aid of AI, which is summarizing lots of content very quickly. You can learn through video. There's loads and loads of really good video stuff available for free. So I think I would have been better, faster, if I'd started now. But there's a lot of things that learning that way has taught me that I'm kind of really grateful for.
Makes sense. That's great. Because also, like, I'm considering myself like a self-taught, and you mentioned a lot of things, and I can imagine how hard it will be. Because for me, I learned from Udemy and online video, from YouTube video and Medium article. So it was I would say much easier than what you mentioned. So because you have to don't have a lot of resources to be able to look up to, and also you need to look for physical books and need to be delivered, and you need to read all of the things. So it will be there's a no control F in the book, so it will be hard to be able to search for things. So that's the thing. And also I think you mentioned some great thing, because back then there is no a Stack Overflow. You just need you need to master your Googling skills, because there is less resources than what is currently available. And also with the help with AI right now, there's a lot of things that is much easier for anyone to be able to learn how to code. I think it's just a matter of discipline, and just need to I would say spend some time to be able to learn it. It just or sacrifice some time to be able to learn it. Because when you are self-taught, you already have other, maybe you are already studying, already working, and you are doing it on your free time. So it's take a lot of discipline to be able to do that. It's not some easy path. It does take some self-discipline to be able to make it, because there is no teacher that is on top of your head, or an exam at the end that you need to pass to be able to get something. It's just a matter of getting and building projects to be able to showcase. And also, when you are going to the market, there's no proof that you are good at what you are doing. So there's no like no degree, no certification, nothing. It just matter of how you can convince the client with your work, with your project that you already built in the free time, to be able to show them that you are capable of what you are talking about, which is really hard compared to like getting a degree, because degree is like here is a degree, so I can this is a proof that I can do this thing. But like as self-taught, there is no like such thing.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting take, and I think what I've found in my career, I've worked with people who've come from like doing a formal CS degree, computer science degree, and even with that, it doesn't make you a good programmer. It helps you to think about how the machine is working and how the systems can be set up to be performant, and that you're learning algorithms and a lot of theory about how all of this stuff works, but that doesn't naturally translate into being a good programmer. And I think that's kind of the thing that I still don't feel that I am a good programmer. I think that's fundamentally what it is. I think, if you look at it just purely on the basis of like, can you write an elegant solution to a given problem? My answer is no, from the angle of a systems thing. But when it comes to, does it solve the business problem? The answer is yes. And then from that perspective, I think I am a good programmer, because I think I can see things from like the business owner or the stakeholder's perspective, and help translate things back from a more technical angle to the terminology that they will understand if they're less technical. And then it becomes less about like how good you are at a sort of some objective scale of measuring things to the standard of grades and certifications and things, and it's more about not even how quickly you can get things done, but how you can achieve an end result that meets all of the requirements within a given time frame, and budget. At the end of the day, is like customers have got a certain amount of money that they can afford to pay for things, and if you can do it within their budget, then that's kind of the job's done. And they care very little really about what programming language you use or what framework you use or how you deliver the thing to the like what algorithms you've used to do it. They just want the thing to work, and for it to work kind of reliably. So yeah, it's kind of, I feel like I learned a lot of those lessons very early on, which was good.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I got the point, because it's at the end of the day, it's not for the sake of the code, but for the impact, or like at the business side of the code. But the code should like meet the requirement that the client want in terms of the technical requirement and also the business requirement. That's a good take for what we mentioned. And also I would love, currently you have two projects that I would love to deep into, but I would love to get some backstory before we dive into this project, which is the Laravel Dev and the native PHP, which is currently the new way for building native desktop application and mobile application using PHP. And I would love to go before this project has been born, what you have been making.
So many things. For the longest time in my career, I was working for web design agencies, software agencies, small teams that were building things for clients, a variety of clients. And in fact, my first, just to like counter everything that I've said already, my first proper web development job, I was working for a small company that was doing ASP.NET, so Microsoft's suite of tools. But I learned there, like the dynamics of working as part of an agency with a small team, working for clients, how the business has to like bill for their time, and that it's very tied to the budgets of the client and what they're prepared to to spend, and we can't go for weeks and months kind of building the perfect solution. We just have to get the thing done and move on to the next thing. But then, after 10 years or more of doing things that way, I moved from that back to PHP very quickly, actually, after about 2 years. But the kind of doing things even with PHP, and I was using WordPress and all sorts of other things to try and build websites basically very quickly, build e-commerce things, managing existing projects and kind of helping people fix the stuff that they put out that they'd not maintained for a very long time. And I got fed up of doing all of that, honestly. It didn't appeal to me as much as it used to, because I got frustrated with the fact that, these businesses basically just, they want you to come in with a quick fix, and it's not elegant and it doesn't feel right, because that the long-term solution is there's something better. There's some better way of doing this. And there was a part of my brain that was going, if only I could just work on like one thing and just focus my attention on making that really good, then, I could really excel. I could show people what I'm capable of, and this kind of thinking. And I moved to working for a product company, but it wasn't a software product. It was actually a hardware product company, and I was building the software to support what they were doing. That was quite interesting, because it was so very different in some respects, because I was thinking about things in a different way, in terms of, I'm not just building this software product that people are using, and I'm thinking about how it works alongside this physical products that this company are making. And I learned so much about myself and about how to do programming well in that environment that it's actually helped me get back to. So right now I'm like freelance, basically. I don't work for any company. And for the last couple of years, after coming out of that job working for that hardware company, I feel like I've had this sort of renewed vigor for doing things for clients, where I kind of have a much clearer view of like how it should be done. Like the whole software development life cycle should be done, and it's not just about the kind of code that you write or how elegant those solutions are. As I've said before, it's helping them to see like what the best process is for them, and most of the time it comes down to, it's not anything to do with code. It's all about deciding what the actual requirements should be for the thing that the problems they're trying to solve. And a lot of the time now I spend just talking with my clients and saying, do you really need to do it this way? Isn't there like a way that you can do this without, code or a system or whatever? And then very carefully getting down to like a minimal set of things that you actually have to build, and then those things are the things that add real value to what people are doing. And I think, it's kind of, I've built lots of systems, I've created loads of tools and things for internal use and external use, and I've made subscription tools and e-commerce things, and it's all been very fun and exciting. But when it comes down to it, the thing that I've really enjoyed the most, and the thing that I think gives the most value to people, is that I can go to the individuals within an organization and say, you should be doing it this way. And like, from my experience, this is the way that really works well. Kind of iterative software development, and just focusing on the immediate sort of requirements, and not trying to think too much about all these eventualities and, edge cases and all of that kind of thing. And that's the bit that I kind of feel that I enjoy way more than even the writing of the code. It's like, when I write code now, I know that it's code that must be written, and it's of real value. It's not just like, chucking some component into some page because somebody says that that's going to be a good thing for the business. So yeah, that's kind of where I would like to stay in what I'm doing now. But as you've mentioned, I've got these other projects that are going on. So
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I think it's like give us like a good ground for what we will be talking next, which is the two products. Because I just would love to get for audience like the backstory of everything, because like all the products will have like been accumulation from previous experience. So I would love to get like the people just a backstory of where everything was like on the making before it's getting like a launch. And the first project I would love to deep into before getting into native PHP is Laravel Dev, which in
Hmm.
like according to the LinkedIn experience, you acquired them in November 2023, and
Yeah.
since then you have been working on it, and it's currently the biggest directory for Laravel Dev. Can you give us more like information or more story of that acquisition, and also what is currently in the roadmap for this product?
Yeah. So Lara Devs, it was actually called Lara Der, which is kind of difficult to say and difficult to spell, but I think Lara Devs is a little bit easier. So I rebranded it to Lara
Okay.
Devs. I think it's laradevs.com. It basically started life as there was an agency in Spain that built this tool, and I wasn't aware of it. In 2023, and I kind of started up doing freelance work again. I was looking for other Laravel developers, and I was looking for other freelancers so that I could collaborate with them and maybe pass them some work, or, maybe even get some work from people as they need, and just kind of create a little community of freelance Laravel developers. And somebody pointed me to what was, Larader at the time, and I didn't really give it too much thought. I signed up to the site and I thought, well, if this is a thing and people it's sort of growing, then maybe I'll get something from it. And I didn't hear anything from the site, and I had a good look through to see if I could find any people, and sort of a lot of the profiles weren't in great shape, and the site was quite basic, and I just thought, this could be quite interesting because it dovetails nicely with some of the things that I'm trying to do around building a little community for myself here. So I reached out to the team that produced the site, and just with a kind of let's chat, I'd kind of be interested to see what you're doing, see if I can help out, because I feel like the site's got some potential. And I didn't hear from them for many, many months. And they finally got back to me, and we had a little call. And I just said to them, I'd kind of be interested to run the site. And it turned out that they were perhaps, let's say, not enjoying running the site very much anymore. I think they'd sort of built it with the hopes that it was going to run away and be successful. And they hadn't really put much thought into how to make that happen. And they'd put a little bit of money behind it, and some some marketing, but again, not really in a position from their side to make that work very well. And I said to them, I proposed that I just take it off their hands basically, and made them an offer which they accepted, and we transferred everything over within a few days, and it was a very very smooth, very easy acquisition. I mean, it was low stakes. They didn't want a lot of money for it, and they, as I say, they accepted my kind of first offer, which was fantastic. And they were very good to deal with in that way. They'd kind of built this thing, and they just flipped it to me, and I thought, right, well, I've got an opportunity to kind of turn this into something, so I'm gonna go at it for a while. And I've spent probably a good few months reinvigorating the site, trying to market it and get more people signed up, and get more businesses seeing it and everything. And it's doing okay. I think from a business point of view, it's not doing enough for it to be like my main source of income or anything like that.
Exactly.
Um, it just sort of covers its own costs right now, which is fine. And yeah, I mean, it's got over 5,000 developers have signed up there, and there's lots more coming through, and there's lots of teams that are visiting the site now and kind of messaging people all of the time, which is really great. Yeah, it's one of those things, like, I thought this feels like it's a good thing to have and to do, for the community. And I'd hoped that it would be a stronger business idea, but I think there's a combination of it. The market is quite tough right now. It has been for a couple of years, in terms of hiring, and I think, but basically just it's one of those things that if you don't, I'm not in recruitment, and it's kind of like a recruitment thing. I don't understand that market very well. And I've kind of approached it from a overly simplistic perspective without too much real deep understanding of what the expectations are of like customers, businesses that are hiring developers, and tried to approach it from a new angle as well, where these businesses would have to reach out to individual developers. And I just think, I've learned something really important about the way that works, is while some businesses are kind of interested to try out these things, the majority just want to work in the traditional ways that they've always been working, that's like convenient to them, where they just put a job ad out and they wait for the applications to come in, which I still think is backwards. But it's a tough, like, trying to push that rock up the hill, sort of going against the grain of the way that the people who are going to pay you for whatever it is that you're trying to do for them, if it doesn't work the way that they're sort of thinking, you're going to have a very difficult time kind of selling it to them, and you're going to have to go around trying to convince them why they should do it this way first. And you kind of just don't want those hurdles in your way when you're trying to sell a product to people. You want it to be, they already know why they need it and why they should do it this way, and that you've just presented them with the solution and they're ready to just pay you for that.
Makes sense.
So yeah, it kind of doesn't do that well enough yet. So in terms of like what the future is for that, I don't know. I mean, I'm keeping the site, I'm keeping it alive. I'm like keeping on like reviewing people's profiles, which I still do manually, and it's just me. So it's still growing. And I think I've got, there's some things that I've been working on a little bit here and there to try and improve things, which I'll keep on doing over the next while. But I'm not spending a lot of time on it because I've got all these other things that I'm doing still.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's great. I think this will give me like a good insight about the project. And also one of the things that is you mentioned is educate the market for the way that you are approaching recruitment, because it's like on the other way, the company will post over LinkedIn or like a platform to be able to recruit people, and they will get an application, they review them. But this one, it's the other side. So the company are going to the site and find the people. And the problem with that, the personal developer doesn't give what the client is expecting, it will hurt the platform, because it's like attaching the person that's working with the platform, which is I think what you mentioned, but correct me if I'm wrong about that. And also I would love to get the problem of getting monetized is like a commission based from the company side, because I think it's not like it's free for developer, or maybe it's from sponsorship. But what is the business model that keep this project alive?
Yeah, it's the typical sort of recruitment approach. I don't know if it's the same in Morocco, but basically, you have these companies that are just recruitment agencies, and they are just a very basic, and this is unfair to many of them. I'm sure they work very hard, but in the simplest terms, they are a filter between the business and the potential candidates, and they become the go-to point for the candidates will supply their resumes, and the businesses will just pay a fee once somebody has been found to fill the role. And the recruitment agency typically in that scenario has to work very hard to ensure that their client, the business that they're searching for candidates for, ultimately respects the contract that they've got in place and pays them their fee. So it's a very risky business, really. And whilst it does work for a lot of people, and a lot of recruitment agencies are very successful, they basically just have to chase down their customers and kind of demand payment, which is not a situation that I can afford to be in. Like, I can't have a customer owing me, say, tens of thousands of dollars, which is what recruitment agencies will charge for an engineering hire, and just have that being unpaid for months and months and months. So it's trying to do something that's kind of right for your business, but also fits well within the way that people, your clients, think about doing business is quite challenging, especially if it's in a sector that you don't know very well. And I don't know recruitment very well. So it was a bit of a risk for me to take that on board, and something I've tried and learned from. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I kind of still have hopes for it as a piece of, kind of a community project. And I think there's still a lot of potential for it in the future. I think it is the only place that I know of where Laravel developers specifically are coming together to kind of share their profiles, and it is the biggest one of those for Laravel developers. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But
Makes sense. Okay, got the point. And like, I would love one question for this product. I find like in the like a footer, is it like only for Laravel developer? Because I see like Next.js, Next, Ruby on Rails. It's like not only Laravel specific.
The focus is Laravel. So
Okay.
all those other skills can be like skills that Laravel developers also have. And I think that's very useful. Like you don't think of just hiring a Laravel developer in isolation. You probably also want them to have maybe some experience with React or Vue or some other things. So
That makes sense.
I've tried to like allow both the engineers who sign up and the businesses who want to find people to kind of filter down based on the different skills that they have. But yeah, no, the core thing is that everyone who signs up to the site must have some demonstrable Laravel skill, and that's something that I look for when I review each profile. So if I don't see that, then they don't make it onto the site, basically.
Makes sense. Okay, that's great. I think all the information that we mentioned for Laravel Dev and the website will be laraveldev.com, and all the link will be in the description of this video if you are watching out from YouTube. If you are listening from Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Spotify, you can check out in the show note. And the next product that I'm pretty excited about, which is NativePHP, which you are the owner and the maintainer for NativePHP, which is a framework for Laravel and PHP for sure, to be able to build native desktop and mobile application. Can you give us the backstory of this project, and why did you decide to build this product?
Well, the backstory is kind of as long as my career. I mean, going back to like what I was saying at the beginning, when I was a kid and I'm looking at how the computer is able to do this stuff when I type stuff in the keyboard or click around with the mouse, and I want to make the machine do all of these things that other people have been able to do, like opening applications that can do really powerful things. I learned to do that over the web because I thought the web was really exciting, and it still is, even 30 years later. It's like this amazing piece of technology that has enabled a huge shift in all sorts of things around the world. But it's not the only way, right? You can still build applications that just run on somebody's machine without the network. And now that we've all got these super smart phones in our pockets, they're basically computers. I mean, they're more powerful than the computer that I had as a kid, and it's condensed to the size of a phone that sits in your pocket, which is incredible. And that's powerful. Like, you should be able to run software on that device, whether it's for you or for other people, regardless of like having the network or the ability to use the network. And I've always wanted to be able to build software across any of those mediums. But PHP has kind of been the limiting factor there for me, because it was the first language that I learned. It's the one that I actually enjoy working with the most. And unfortunately, it's not really been well built to do programming in these other contexts. Like, you can't build desktop applications with PHP. You can't build mobile applications with PHP, because it just doesn't provide that kind of tooling. And it has intentionally stayed away from that. I mean, I think there have been, over the years, a few projects where people have tried to help PHP be capable of doing this. But I think the core, sort of always, whoever's been in charge of looking after the core of PHP at that particular point in time has decided this isn't a core thing for the language. So we're not gonna have any like first party support for this thing. If some people want to build their own projects, that's fine, but like, you go and do that. We're going to continue doing this, which is fine. Like, they're quite within their rights to do that. But I think it's a bit of a shame, because I do feel like the language itself is just another language. It's no different from Python or Ruby or Go. Aside of the paradigm of the language and the way its sort of execution is different to some of those, and its memory model is different and all of that. But in principle, you're just writing code instructions, and those instructions should be capable of kind of doing anything. So it's always like stuck in my mind that it should be possible for PHP to, somebody who knows PHP should be able to build any kind of software. And we started to see in recent years, people building like CLI tools with PHP, and they've got really slick and advanced, frameworks like Symfony and Laravel have had strong CLI tools for many years. And, just in the last few years, people have been advancing on those and building really cool things. Stuff like Composer, it's essentially built in PHP, and it's shipped to everybody's computer. You download Composer, and Composer is shipped to you as what's called a FAR, a PHP archive. So it's a single file that runs all of this different code. It's all kind of packaged up nicely inside. So it feels like it's quite achievable for PHP to do this sort of, I can distribute my code to you and you can run it on your machine or your device. But the thing that's been lacking there is, PHP developers know how to run PHP code because they install PHP on their machines and they have it available to the system. So then when they've got a PHP script and they're running it from the command line, or they're opening, via a web server, a page in their web browser that runs PHP, then it's all like hooked up and working. But for an average user who doesn't have PHP, doesn't want to think about having PHP, there's no way for them to take a PHP application and run it on their device. And so the first kind of challenge there was like, how do you get PHP onto somebody's device almost without them knowing about it? It's like, you need to package this up in a way that's like nice and easy for them to not even worry about, that they just download your application and it works. And that was one of the first problems that I went kind of hunting to solve. And this is going back many years, probably 2018, 2019. I was kind of thinking about this problem in more detail. And I stumbled across a tweet from a Laravel community member, and like very high profile, a guy called Marcel Poziot, who people in the Laravel community will almost certainly know, because the company that he is the CTO for is called Beyond Code. It's a small company that build software for Laravel developers, essentially. And they built a tool called Tinkerwell, and they built Laravel Herd, which is kind of becoming a very good way, kind of very popular way to build, to run PHP on your computer. He had tweeted something about trying to get like CLI applications running on any machine. And this was one of his like code experiments. He does a lot of these sorts of things, and he tweets about it, and everybody gets excited, and then maybe, you know, he'll sort of pick it up and turn it into something at some later point. But the years went by, and I don't think I'd heard anything from him about it again. And I went digging out this old tweet and went on a little voyage of discovery trying to find out exactly how he'd done that. I think I messaged him asking him about it, but didn't hear from him. And then I found some tool that he'd used and he'd posted some comments on in GitHub issues and things like that. And this tool was there, just kind of ready to use in this way, almost ready to use in this way, to build what we call now static PHP binaries. So this is like a way to build PHP so that it works without having to do any configuration or compilation or any of that kind of stuff. And it's just a single file. You end up with a single file, which is the PHP executable for every platform. So you can have one for Windows, one for Mac, one for Linux. And it's built with all of the dependencies that it needs, all kind of like chunked together into this one thing. So you can just pass this executable around to any system and it will run, you know, PHP now will run on that system. And this is the baseline for things like Laravel Herd. I think Franken PHP uses it. I'm saying all these names. I don't know if you know these projects or not, but yeah, there's a bunch of tools within the community now that use this stuff. And yeah, basically at the beginning of 2023, I was trying to figure out how to make this library work in this way. And I was working with the person who was maintaining this static PHP CLI, it's called. Working with them to try and get it to a point where it would build a version of PHP that would run Laravel, you know, a Laravel application just on my Mac, you know. So I'm like, can you compile it? I'm just like messaging them. They're Chinese and I'm messaging them in English, like, can you compile this extension now? Can you compile that? And then they're replying back in Chinese. You know, I'm sort of Google translating everything. And between us, over the course of a couple of weeks or so, we managed to get to a build of the PHP executable for Mac that ran Laravel. And I was like, this is it. This is amazing. You know, like, this is the moment that I can now kind of share this with the world. And I started putting some other things together. I thought it would be really cool to bundle it into Tori, which is a kind of browser application framework. So you can build desktop applications. It does mobile applications as well, but using just web tools. And it's built on Rust, and it's all this sort of performant. And it's if you're familiar with Electron, it's similar to Electron, not quite exactly the same. And I threw together a demo, kind of did a little video, and threw it up onto Twitter and stuff like that, and just kind of try and get people excited about it as well. And to my surprise, a lot of people were excited about it. I got message from Taylor Otwell, who's the guy who runs Laravel. I got message from Marcel because, you know, I think he realized that this was very similar to some of the stuff that he was doing some years before. And from that moment, things just sort of exploded. You know, like native PHP became a thing. Marcel helped me work out how to put it into Electron, and he did a load of work, and he did a talk about it in 2023 at Laracon, and we announced native PHP to the world. And, you know, like, basically this project just appeared out of nowhere because of this one little piece of very tricky work, I would say, that I'd done to like help the thing get to a certain point.
Interesting.
But I think there was one question, in fact, that Marcel got. So he's on stage in, where were we? Nashville, in Tennessee,
Okay.
in the US. So he's on stage. I'm in the audience because, you know, I think it was the first Laracon in person after COVID. So,
Okay.
you know, there was like a few years in between where they weren't able to do the conference. And I'd been to the one in New York in 2019, so it was just before COVID. And I was like, I'm definitely coming to these again. You know, I'm going to make the effort to go to the US. Then COVID happened. And then the next one was Nashville. So I'm there at Nashville. I was going to be there anyway, but now Marcel is like there talking about the project that I've been working, like this thing, and I'm just like super excited. And one of the first questions I think he got after his talk was, when is it going to work on mobile? And, it's like, wow, okay, we've just shown you something incredible that's working on desktops. PHP has never been able to do this really in this way. Give us a second, like, let's just bask in that for a minute. Go on.
Yeah, makes sense. I think it's like the mobile was next the thing that we'll be working on for native PHP. So it's like a first desktop, and later on it will be mobile. So it's like the reading your roadmap for native PHP.
Yeah. Well, what was really interesting about that whole thing for me is, there was a lot of attention around the initial kind of, oh, cool, PHP desktop applications, and people feeding back like more than I think I've ever experienced this kind of like response to anything that I've put out, certainly on Twitter. And it was like the market, I'll say it this way, like put it back to business terms for a second. The market was reaching out and telling me what it wanted. And I think over the kind of couple of years since then, what I've learned is that people, desktop apps are still cool. They're still great. It's a good thing to be able to build, and it's nice to be able to do that with PHP and Laravel. But it's not as exciting as building mobile applications. And I think there's some like really obvious reasons for that. I think, people know that almost everybody has got a phone in their pocket.
Yes.
And so the potential is that they can be on their device any time of the day, wherever they are, and they can be connected to other people, other systems and services, just by whipping this screen out of their pocket or bag or whatever, and doing something very, very quickly with it. And that's appealing, that's appealing for businesses, that's appealing to individuals, and, even people who are building little side projects for themselves. How many times have you thought, oh, it'd be so great if I had a little app just to do this, one thing just for me. Like, I don't care about anybody else. I don't think anybody else needs it, but it would be great if I could just do this. And, up until now, in order to even achieve some of that stuff, you have to go and learn some other new tooling. So if PHP was the language that you knew, and it was the one that you're most comfortable with, and you knew Laravel, none of that would help you, basically. You might be able to build some server-side element to your application, but the application itself, you'd have to build in Swift or Kotlin or, React Native. Like, you've got to go and learn these other tools. And when people were sort of coming back, they were tweeting at me about mobile, and then we saw Marcel's talk and people were asking about mobile, and after the talk people were asking us about mobile, and then for the whole time since then people have been asking about mobile. And I've just had this, like, it's kind of like a thorn in my side.
Mobile.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I've got to figure this out. And I chatted with Marcel about it because he's very intelligent. He's very skilled, and he's got a very good way of kind of thinking through problems very quickly and coming to conclusions about what's possible and what's not possible. And his first kind of reaction was, it's not going to work. Like, it can't work because people, companies like Apple won't ever allow it. And I think, that I can understand that perspective, but what I perhaps didn't appreciate from that so much was how that informed, like, intent. Let's not try because it's not gonna work, and sometimes you still just have to try. And I went down the path of trying, regardless. I was like, oh well, let's just see, because I realized that. I did a bit of research. There were some apps on the App Store that do run PHP. And I was like, well, how are they running PHP? Is it like some kind of fake version of PHP, just like emulate writing PHP code, and it's doing something with some other language under the hood and whatever? And it turned out, actually, no, they were just running PHP on a web server on the phone. And I was like, well,
Okay.
I mean, that's a bit gross, like all of that effort to just run PHP. And there were sort of very limited tools, you know, like what they could do and couldn't do. And I was just like, so I feel like it's possible to make PHP work in this way. And it will be accepted by Apple because it's on the stores. So they haven't really got anything against PHP being used. Now I just need to like figure out how to actually make it work. And I went on this, you know, another one of those, like, go into the cave for 6 months and sort of try and figure this problem out. It was probably a bit longer than that, honestly. But, you know, in the meantime, I'm doing like client work, and I've got Laravel Devs and all these other things going on. But I've got this side project of like, let's figure out how to do native PHP on iOS as a baseline. And I come away from I went to Texas last year for Laracon US, was in wherever it was, Dallas, and you know, I came away from there, I was like really enthused. I'm going to put a talk proposal together. I'm going to talk about building mobile apps, which I haven't figured out yet, but I'm going to talk about building mobile apps with PHP. And I put this proposal into a few conferences and just like, let's see what happens. Maybe something will come out of it. And I sort of left the project at that stage. You know, I'd kind of done enough work to determine that it was sort of plausible and how I would do it if I finally did knuckle down to it. And then months went by, I hadn't done anything. And the organizer of Laracon EU, which happens in Amsterdam, came back to me in like November, I think it was, of last year, and said, is there any chance that you would come and speak at the February one, so in like 3 months' time? And I was like, oh, I mean, yes, obviously I'd love to. And my talk is all about building mobile apps with PHP, and I haven't really figured out how to do that yet. So I then went into like properly into the cave, like the depths of the cave, and tried to smash out how to make this work. And surprisingly, you know, to me, surprisingly, I managed to get a working model of this thing going enough to kind of demo something during my talk, which was, you know, so the talk was like the driver to make this happen.
Yeah. It's like this is like the pushers, like you have like a deadline, and you need to make it to the
Exactly.
It's like you have a demo call, and you need to figure out how you can make this product at least working in some way to be able to demonstrate to people, so people can like trust or like know that it could be happening. At least this is like the theory, because you mentioned that like the person like from Laravel told that this cannot be done, and you need just to show that it could be done. This is like the theory. It's like from it can be done to just it could be. It's not should be like fully working, but it should be like currently working like for the demo purposes at least.
Exactly, a proof of concept, and that's kind of all it needed to be. So I'd managed to get, you know, sort of over the holiday period, let's say, of last year, I'd managed to get this demo working, and I was like really surprised by how that had come together. It was very different from the way that it works on the desktop, and it even from the other apps that are on the app stores, you know, that run PHP. It works very differently to those. There's like no web server involved. We basically compiled PHP directly into the application. So you have a Swift application, and the PHP engine is just like compiled into a C library, which can be embedded inside of that. So you just got all of this like C code, and it all just gets compiled together. PHP is not running, it's not doing anything. But then with a bit of setup, so when I say like I want to load a specific URL, let's say, you know, because that's how Laravel thinks about the world, it's expecting a URL request, you know, with some headers and whatever. and it's going to do its work, and then it's going to spit out some HTML. If I can make it do that cycle of like receiving a request and giving out a response, then that's it. You know, I've done the hard part really. And I'd already figured out that I can make PHP do that many months before. What I needed to do was figure out how do I kind of boot that up inside of this Swift application. And once I sort of cracked that, I remember like I cried a little bit because it was a good moment, you know. And then I just started sharing it on Twitter and things again, you know. It's like, this is cool. I can run PHP on an iPhone, and here it is, you know, running on my phone, and I'm showing people through the video what's going on. And it seemed to do that same thing again that happened, you know, back in 2023. It was like people got really excited. People were asking me all sorts of questions. There was lots of reactions to my tweets and videos and things. And it just kicked off again. And I was like, wow, there's some, you know, like I knew that people wanted mobile, you know, PHP to work on mobile, but I didn't realize just how much. And I spent a little bit more time trying to refine my proof of concept. And of course, at this, I'm also trying to write a talk, you know, because I've got this conference talk to do at the beginning of February. So I'm like writing my talk, and I'm rewriting my talk, and I'm refactoring this whole proof of concept, and just every bit that I do makes it feel more and more stable, and like it's becoming a thing that could actually work really well. And a few bits fall into place of like, how do I call native functionality? You know, like can I tap into the camera and vibration, you know, like these device features, and do stuff there. And it turns out that it was all very, very straightforward now. You know, like now I can do all of this stuff. This feels like something really valuable to people. And everybody's like responding with all this positive energy around this thing. And I just thought, I feel like I need to just turn this into a product. You know, if I can just in the next couple of weeks that I've got, turn this into something that I can sell to people, I think I've got a real like business opportunity here. And then I went and gave the talk in February, and it all, you know, like my life changed.
That's interesting because I'm following the story, and it's like you mentioned there is like a little break that was in the tunnel of getting you into mobile, and as you hit that break or break that stuff, you open up a lot of door, and it's much easier for you to be able to have access to native feature, and also for developer who are using or already know PHP and Laravel can build native mobile application. And also one of the questions that I would love to ask, especially for this project, what was the source of inspiration for this project? For example, we already have React Native for React developer. We already have like a Ionic for like a web developer. We already have Electron for JavaScript developer for building desktop application. What is the source of inspiration or source of motivation for building something that is already been for other framework or other like a programming language for PHP developer? So what is your take about that?
So I've looked at all of those other tools, and I've gone, you know, like take Electron just for a simple example. You know, like I would have to build all of my application in JavaScript, or TypeScript, and not that that's bad in any way, but you know, I've spent the better part of 20-something years building applications with PHP. I've got a very stable ecosystem of tools and experience that I'm very happy with, and I can build things really rapidly with those tools. I love using Laravel, for example. Like I don't build anything now without using Laravel because I'm so familiar with it. It's so good, it's so stable, etc., etc. There's a whole load of reasons why, for me personally, I should continue to build things in those tools. And so when I'm like, if I have the challenge or urge to build something that's kind of outside of the scope of those tools, like a desktop app or a mobile app, the frustration starts when I'm like, well, I can do it like this in Laravel. You know, I can do this really easily with PHP. And I'm having to learn all of these new isms, you know, like the language, the problems with the different language, or the problems with this specific library or tool, or trying to get into the ecosystem a little bit in the community to kind of get some help from people who I don't know anybody in those communities, or certainly not many people very well. They're very big. They've been going for many years. Like, it feels like I've got a lot of catching up to do just to even start getting close to level 0. And yeah, that is just frustrating when you've got things that you want to do, like you've got problems that you want to solve. And I think most PHP programmers are quite pragmatic. They use the language to get stuff done, and they move on and they get on with their lives. And I want to do the same, but I want to do that for mobile applications and desktop applications as well.
Excellent.
So my overarching question was also, why can't I do this with PHP? There's no reason really why. There's people who tell you shouldn't do it with PHP, but that's not like preventing you from doing it. That's just a suggestion. And so, yeah, and then there's this part of my brain that's going, well, I just want to tinker with this stuff. I just want to see what's possible if I start down this path, because it feels like it should be doable. And lo and behold, it is, and I can't say that there's really any inspiration other than just because I wanted to. The fact of these other tools existing in JavaScript and other languages is kind of an aside. It's like, yeah, of course they do. Like, some of them were built to serve those specific purposes. Swift exists entirely to build Apple, Mac and iPhone applications and that kind of thing. PHP is just another language. So I'm just like, why can't it work this way? So just try to figure it out.
Yeah, it makes sense. And also, the last question for the native PHP product is, what is the business model behind this product? Is it like a license, commercial license? What is the take about the business model behind it?
Yep. So the desktop version is completely open source. So it's free to use, and you can contribute to it and all of that kind of things. Like, you can use it however you want. You can sell stuff from it, whatever. There's no restrictions there. But the mobile piece, I was just saying, it sort of felt very valuable, and a lot of people were asking for it. And that gave me the sense that this is something that they would find valuable too. It's like, if you can unlock a new skill for people without them having to learn something new, they're not going to have to invest their time in books or videos or courses or other materials to, and just spend maybe weeks of their time practicing and learning. And suddenly they can build mobile applications. It feels like quite a valuable thing to have. And so I decided that for this particular piece, this was going to be not closed source, but like what we call source available, but it's not open source, right? So it's the source code can be read, but you're not licensed to kind of distribute it, basically.
Yeah, makes sense.
You have to purchase a license in order to use it, and that license grants you the ability to deploy applications to the stores. And so I set it up so that you just have to buy a license, and you renew the license to get the latest updates. So that's basically the business model right now.
That's great. I think we covered good ground for the two products, Laravel Dev and NativePHP. But let's move on to the last section of this podcast episode, and it will be about the person behind this, like a two products. And I would love to get you like a day-to-day life of running these two products on the side, and also the stuff that you're already working on. Yeah. So what is your day-to-day looks like?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. So I still have some of my freelance clients, which I'm working with for now, although I'm hoping to go full-time on native PHP in the coming weeks. So that's the plan. But right now I spend a lot of my time working for my clients. They pay the bills, which is, kind of critical. Yes. So there's that. A few months ago, a buddy of mine, Shane, he started working on the Android side of native PHP, and we joined forces and set up a business behind it. So we're both working on that business, which is the one that sells licenses to native PHP for mobile, but we're also working on some other products. So I spend a lot of time chatting with him at the moment. He's in the US, so we have a few hours of overlap in the day, and we spend quite a bit of time talking to each other and kind of planning things, working together, and sorting out like native PHP things. And that's almost every day. And then, yeah, for Lara devs, I don't spend as much time as I should on that probably. It's maybe a couple of hours a week, so not very much there. But yeah, as I say, the majority of my time at the moment is taken up with my client work still.
Makes sense. Okay, that's great. So the last section for this podcast episode, it will be like for people that would love to connect with you and learn more about all this product that we mentioned, where they can find you.
I'm most active on Twitter or X, and yeah, my username is Simon Hamp. So I try to keep things simple. My username is usually Simon Hamp everywhere. I am also on Blue Sky and things, but it's slightly different in some places. So it might be like simonhamp.me, which is my website. You know, Blue Sky is like at simonhamp.me. Yeah, I can't think of any other specific places, but you know, one of the things that I try to do is be a bit of everywhere. Like it's annoying because I have to post everywhere all of the time, but I found that to be like a really good way of just getting the message out to as many people as possible, because you know, whatever it is that you're working on and you want people to see it, I think you have to kind of be everywhere.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Simon, for this opportunity to share the story about the two products, Laravel Dev and the native PHP. It was such a pleasure to hosting you for today's episode.
Thanks for having me. It's been really nice and letting me talk and talk and talk. I appreciate it.
No worries.